Okay. Hi, good evening. Uh, I want to start with a double apology. Number one, please forgive me if I sneeze and sniffle. I'm having terrible allergies to the. I don't know if spring is coming, but here in Jerusalem, a lot of trees are blossoming and a lot of bushes are blooming, and my eyes are itchy and my nose is running and I'm sneezing. But hopefully, once I get going, it won't affect things. The other thing is, I'm not talking about this week's parsha. I'm talking about last week's parsha. So I'm apologizing for that, but you'll understand why in just a minute, because tonight is Rosh Chodesh, so Chodesh Tov to everybody. But tomorrow night really begins the month of Adar, and starting from Rosh Chodesh Adar, this coming day, was the custom of giving matzah shekel. It began with Rosh Chodesh, and people had a month to bring it, and it was a big deal. If you look, and I want to do something very unusual tonight. I want to talk a little bit about not just the concept of matzah shekel, two aspects of the concept, but then I want to talk about the mitzvah / minhag of matzah shekel. So, which we don't usually go into halacha very much, but this evening, I hope, leave myself enough time, last 15, 20 minutes, I do want to talk about the halacha. But I want to start with history. And if you look at the sheet, you can see I put a picture on the sheet. This is a picture. It's actually an enhanced picture. The real coins didn't look this sharp. The website I took the picture from enhanced it. This is a photograph, an enhanced photograph of a coin that was found outside Ir David. I don't know when it was found, but it was announced last summer. About 6 or 7 months ago, they announced that they had found this coin right outside Ir David. Across the street from Ir David, Rehov Silwan, there is a massive dig going on, and this coin was found. It's very rare. Out of approximately 1,000 coins found in Jerusalem from the Second Temple period, only 3 of them are this kind of coin. And like I said, one was found in the previous year's dig last summer, last spring or summer, whenever they actually found it. That date wasn't given; it was announced in the summertime. And this coin says on it a number of things. On the side, the left side, which has the chalice, the geviyah, the kos, it says matzah shekel in early Hebrew, and above the geviyah there is a shin and then a gimel, shana gimel. So this was the 3rd year of the rebellion against Rome. So the rebellion in Rome began in 67, 68 of the Common Era, and the temple was destroyed in 70 in the 3rd year. So this coin was minted in the 3rd year of the rebellion, and probably very close to the time when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. The other side of the coin, which has a leaf, which has 3 rimonim on it, 3 pomegranates, that says above it, Yerushalayim HaKadosh, Holy Jerusalem. And that's where we believe this coin was indeed minted. And like I said, we have found a couple of other of them. There's the 3rd one we found of this coin. And I don't remember what years of the rebellion the other 2 are from. I think this is the only one that's found from the 3rd year of the rebellion. And this coin is tiny. It's the size of a small button. It's only approximately 7 millimeters 7 millimeters across. So it's the size of like a shirt button here. It's tiny. It's a tiny coin made out of pure silver. And if you weigh this coin, it comes out to approximately 9 grams of pure silver. And the reason that they made these coins was to give machzit shekel. And until the rebellion, the Jews were not allowed to make their own coins. Today, if a country becomes independent, they write a constitution, they make a flag, and and maybe they come up with a national anthem, all of those things. But in the ancient world, the way that you showed that you were an independent nation was to mint your own coins. And we have coins from the Maccabean rebellion, which had been Greek coins, which the Jews restruck with Jewish symbols over the Avodah Zarah from the Greeks, from the Mityavdim, the Hellenists. And the same thing happened during the Bar Kokhba rebellion, where they took Roman coins and they would put on it, Yerushalayim. Hi, Gail. And you put on it Yerushalayim over these coins that had already belonged to the Romans. Almost all of the coins that were found in Yerushalayim were made out of bronze. These were very unusual in that they're silver. And it said on it, machzit shekel. And before the rebellion, when the Jews had to give machzit shekel, they gave a coin that came from Phoenicia. Today, that'd be Lebanon. And it was from the city of Tsur, Tyre, half shekel coin. The Phoenician language is very similar to Hebrew. The alphabet is exactly like ours. And they made these coins that Jews used to give the machzit shekel in Jerusalem. But once we started the rebellion, 2 things happened. Number one, we could no longer trade with outside countries. The Romans cut us off, number one. And number 2, we were independent, so we could make our own coins. So one of the things they did was they minted these coins so that everybody could give machzit shekel, which meant giving machzit shekel was very, very important to the Jews in Jerusalem throughout all of Jewish history, but especially during this period when everything was topsy-turvy because of the rebellion against Rome. But nevertheless, people still, when it came Rosh Chodesh Adar, tomorrow night, into the 29 or 30 days, depending upon how the calendar was in those days, they would give the machzit shekel. So that is where I wanted to start this evening. But in the pasuk, when it says that you're supposed to give machzit shekel, 2 sort of weird things happen. So let's take a look at the pasuk. Ki tisa et rosh bnei Yisrael l'fikudehem. When you literally lift up the heads of bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. In other words, in my translation here from JPS says when you take a census, when you count the heads, a head count, okay? L'fkudehem, according to their role. A tafkid is a purpose or a role. Here, the translation from JPS is talking historically that when the Jews were counted, it was for the idea of knowing how many men were available for the draft to go into the army. So that's why the JPS translation says according to the army enrollment. That's not exactly what the word means, but okay. V'natnu ish kofer nafsho, and each person gave a kofer. So this translation is ransom, and I called the subtitle on the sheet the ransom. We're going to talk about that hopefully in about 10 minutes. But But really, we know what the word kofir means. Yom Kippurim. It's a kapara. It's an atonement for something. So we're giving this coin to be counted, but it serves a separate purpose to be a kapara for the person giving it. What does that mean? We're going to have to wait a few minutes to find out. Okay. Finishing the verse. La Hashem, and the kapara, the atonement, goes to God, bifkodotam, when they are counted. V'lo yeh behem negef bifkodotam, so that there shouldn't be any damage coming to them when they get counted. So the JPS translation says negef is like a magefa, which is an epidemic or a pandemic, okay? That's negef. But Rashi, if you look at the translation in the Rashi below the coins, it says calamity. A negef means something negative happening. Does it have to be a disease? We don't know. So we're saying a bunch of things. Number one, we're saying we want to count all of the males between the ages of 20 and 60. Those were the people who originally were obligated to give this coin. That's number one. Number two, that this coin somehow did something positive spiritually for them. What exactly that is, I don't know. Okay? Then the third thing is that if you counted them without them giving these special coins, then something bad would happen to them. I mean, at first blush, it's sort of hard to understand what exactly is going on here in this custom. So let's talk about some of the ideas for what's going on before we get to how we fulfill this custom, both back then and nowadays. So Rashi says that there be no calamity. So what's the problem? For numbers. That means things that have been numbered are subject to the influence of the evil eye. In other words, what's the evil eye? I have no idea. I grew up reading Little Abner, which was a cartoon strip in the Boston Globe, written by a Jewish guy named Alan Kaplan, who signed it Al Cap, and he had a character who was Eagle Eye Flegel, and he would look at people and bad things would happen to them. But Jews believed and he was Jewish, and people believed in the evil eye. What is the evil eye? I don't know. But it could be jealousy. And that makes sense in the Rashi, that once you start coming to people and say, oh, I just counted my money and I'm a millionaire, right? And people might think, I'm jealous of him, I don't like him, or whatever. So that there's this problem when you announce numbers that perhaps there might be something negative about it. So when we count them, instead of just giving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they give the coins. So we don't count the people, their heads, we count these half shekel coins. Okay, very nice. And actually, a magefa, a plague, did strike the Jews in the time of David HaMelech, because he counted the Jews without the coins. And it's a problem. It's a machloket, it's an argument. Was the magefa just because he counted Jews without the coins, or was it that he counted the Jews for no good reason? A lot of commentaries, the Ramban in the lead says it's always permitted to count if there's an awfully good reason for it. Like, I've got X amount of food and I have to know how many portions to give out there. And I'll give you another example. When we were leading tours for 8th graders For 11 years, I was one of the tour leaders for the middle school I was teaching at in America. And, when the kids were already on the bus, we would go, everybody would call out their number, or we'd go, not one, not two, not three. Cool. All of that's nice. But when we were someplace like on a hike or something, I said, get rid of the shtuyot. We have to know how many kids we have here. We can't lose anybody. And I said, let's just count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's fine, because it was necessary. Necessary for safety reasons. Then you don't have to worry. You're not counting them for a display. There's nothing that the evil eye or jealousy could affect. You're doing it because it's absolutely necessary. And I know when you go to a minyan, they say, you can do, Hoshia eta mechu varech et lachaltecha urim v'nasem ad olam, and that's 10. So you have a minyan, which is okay. But if there's some sort of, like I said, God forbid, there's a traffic accident, you want to account for everybody on the bus or in the car, you just count and not worry, because the bad thing has already happened. And now we're trying to make sure that safety is maintained. But we don't normally just count things, because we have the sense that counting may carry some negativity to it. What exactly it is, I'm not sure, but I lean toward jealousy. Okay, the sforno. The need to count human beings stems from the fact that human beings are not the same each time. Ooh. When I count people this year, I'm counting somebody different than I counted last year. He's not necessarily the same person he was. We're not we're not these unchanging statues that are exactly like we were last year. No, we grow and change and develop, sometimes for the better and sadly sometimes for the worse. So we have to count them every year to establish, do we have the people that we need to get whatever's done, because not everybody is up to the task this year. That is, ever since death was decreed upon mankind, this reflects sin. We change. We're better or worse than we might have been before. Prior to sin, man, who was meant to live indefinitely, would be the same at each count. In other words, if Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, hadn't sinned with the fruit, in the whatever fruit it was, in the Garden of Eden, in Gan Eden, then there'd be no death, and then there'd be no sin, and there'd be no aging. But we have to count, because we do have these realities where people change. And we have to count, not just because you were a good guy last year, but you may not be a good guy this year, or vice versa. But we also have to count because maybe this year you can, help out with the army, but next year you may be too old to do it. Generally, we counted from 20 to 60, but still some people in the count may not have been capable of serving. The sages said that no one dies unless he had committed a sin. It's Gemara. Then the Gemara says that there were 3 people that died without having sinned, but generally people die because of sin. It follows that mention of a head count of people is an oblique reminder of man's sin, his guilt. This being so, it is most appropriate that at the time of such a count, he should pay some ransom on behalf of his soul. Okay? So that he will qualify for atonement and be safe from punishment for whatever it is he did wrong. This also explains why the poor must not give less, nor the rich more, as a soul's ransom is not calculated in terms of the amount of money offered to God. It's based on the objective reality of every soul. And so we keep one set amount. I mean, I didn't put down the commentary that says we give half coins because nobody is complete without other people in the community, so that the halves come together to make wholes. But in other words, it's something spiritual about it. We'll see more about that in the Slonimer Rebbe in just a few minutes. Okay. The Chizkuni says, furthermore, our sages state that blessings never accompany matters which are subject to counting, measuring, or weighing. In light of this, the Torah here assures us that this census will not have any negative fallout, saying that the atonement which accompanies this census neutralizes any of the negative fallout, the negative ramifications of what we've done. How come blessings aren't on things which have been counted or weighed? Because people had this notion that if I don't know how many eggs are in that bushel, if I come back tomorrow, there may be more. If I know how many there are, then that it won't change. I have trouble with this concept, but just you should know that people sort of used to feel that way. If I don't know exactly how many I've got, and the same thing ends up happening with grandchildren. I've spoken about this before. I gladly count my grandchildren. In the beginning of Sefer Bamidbar, it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu counted the Jews all the time as a show of affection. Well, if God can count us, I think I can count my grandchildren. Even though many people have a custom not to state numbers vis-a-vis their grandchildren. And Baruch Hashem, I keep counting them, and the numbers keep growing. So I have nothing to complain about. And I hope that's true of Hashem, too, when he counts us. The Or HaChaim, our sages comment that a sinner causes his head to be bowed, lowered, that if once you start sinning, you just sink lower and lower. Okay, I hate to think that the people I see walking down the street who are like hunched over, I hope they're not sinners. I hope it has to do with their back, not their soul. But okay. But nevertheless, the Or HaChaim says that sinning causes one's head to be bowed. Evil is defined as something which causes man to look only at what is below him, at the ground, whereas Kedusha, sanctity, results in raising up one's head and elevating a person spiritually. The good people look up and the bad people look down. It's just interesting. I mean, as a kid, we always were looking down. Maybe you find a coin and you didn't want to step on any cracks. But generally speaking, it's good to look in front of you and see what's coming. You will not become victimized. Whoops, sorry, I read that. We know that the Torah describes even the cave of Machpelah as undergoing an elevation after Avram purchased it. We can understand why the expression ki tisa, when you raise up, is appropriate here. In other words, the purpose of the count is to raise up the individuals being counted. How do they get raised up? By doing a mitzvah. The mitzvah is counting to know how many people in the army. In a minute, we'll talk about what happened to the money. We'll get there, okay? But initially, it is, I'm volunteering for the army. I want to serve. In the time of Yoshua, only Torah scholars were allowed in the army. It was a great honor. It was a great honor to serve in the army of Yoshua. And these are very positive and beautiful ideas. Okay. Rabbeinu Bechai, the most important revelation of our verse is that all the people that were counted each enjoy individual supervision of their fates by God. All the deeds performed by any individual are recorded. That we know. We believe that very strongly. That's what Rosh Hashanah is about, the metaphor of the book being open. There isn't a book. It's a metaphor, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu records everything. This is why these people become potential victims of a plague. As long as they had only been part of a whole and not individuals on their own right, the evil eye couldn't focus on them. In other words, if I am doing something with a group, I get merit, I get zchut from the whole unity of the group. I don't want to be looked at all by myself. If I'm looked at all by myself, I have to rely on my own merit, and I'm afraid I don't have enough merit. I'm assuming in the Kehillah, this is one of the reasons we daven with the minyan. We don't daven alone, because we assume that within the Kehillah, within the unity of the group, there is enough merit that a Kadosh Baruch Hu will listen to our tefillot, to our prayers. But if I'm on my own, it's up to me. And maybe I don't want to have the chutzpah to say I deserve anything. It's not up to, I'd rather be seen in the whole group. There's an interesting scene at the end of the Broadway musical, later movie, 1776, about the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And one of the members of the Pennsylvania delegation was against signing it. And he was confident that, in not signing it, because there was a lot of people. But when it comes down to the actual vote, and they needed every state, and Pennsylvania was even, and his vote was going to make the difference of the Declaration of Independence being accepted or being rejected. His one vote. And at that point, he said, I can't vote against it because I don't want the spotlight of history to be on me. I don't want people in future generations to say, I'm the one that stopped it from being. I want to be subsumed into the group. And it's a fascinating idea. I have no idea if it's true. It's probably not. I mean, it was a musical comedy that I enjoyed. But the concept is fascinating. You'd rather not have, in this case, the spotlight of history. In our case, the microscope of God inspecting us individually. We would like to be subsumed in the group because we believe that in the group there is enough merit to make sure that everyone in it is fair. Okay. Top of the next page. Seeing that they were not a number in themselves, the whole idea of enjoying individual supervision of one's fate by God carries with it also the awesome responsibility, of ensuring one does not become a candidate for punishment by God. Yeah, I remember when I went in the army. A friend of mine, actually was my boss, Rabbi David, said, make sure you don't stand out. Blend in as best you can. It didn't help me very much because I was the tallest guy in my unit, but so it was hard for me to blend in and not stand out. We actually had a lot of guys from Ethiopia who were very short, so it was very, very hard for me not to stand out. But people don't want to stand out. People want to, to somehow blend into the background, blend into the scenery, and not stand out. We're going to skip this next piece. I was going to compare Geula and Pidyon to Pekida and Kofir, but we're not going to have time because we're going to talk about the minhag. But I do want to go. The last thing we want to do before we start to talk about some of the halachic ramifications and some of the minhagim of giving matzit shekel, there's one beautiful idea from the Netivot Shalom. The Netivot Shalom was the Slonim Rebbe. And Rabbi Barkarsky, and he was just a fascinating man. He died in 2000, and he was a Chassid. He was the head of the Slonim school of Chassidut, and he made Aliyah before World War II, and most of the Slonim Chassidim were killed in the war, and the previous Rebbe who died in the war was his uncle, and sort of by default, he became the Rebbe. But he was always a Zionist, which was not common amongst Hasidim in Eastern Europe, and even before the war, and even after the war. Not all Hasidim were into this idea of Zionism, but he was. And he came here without his uncle, his Rebbe, his uncle's permission before the war. And he came here, and first he learned in other yeshivot, and then eventually he started his own yeshiva. And after the war, this was where the survivors of Slonim came to coalesce into a community. And Baruch Hashem was joined by others. And even though their Beit Midrash is on the edge of Mea Shearim, I mean, the edge of the real Mea Shearim, that blocked-in area on the south side of Rehov Mea Shearim. That's really used to be actually a walled-in area. They're on the edge of it. Nevertheless, they remain, Zionistic in a lot of their outlook. And that's, that having the Medina is a positive thing. And it's not very popular necessarily, but the Rebbe didn't care. The Rebbe stood up for what he believed was true. And it was unusual in Mea Shearim to go hear him speak, that in the audience there would always be, a smattering of Nit Yarmulkes to hear the Slonim. So he talks about this idea. This is my translation. It doesn't appear in English. So if it doesn't seem clear, it's my fault. So the Rebbe said, a person should give his ransom. So what do we mean by ransom? Well, how is this a ransom or a kapara? In modern Yiddish, a kapara means something negative happened to you, but this little negative thing saved you from a bigger negative thing happening. People talk, you're walking down the street on a rainy day and the bus splashes you with water. You say, must be a kapara. And better this than, something much worse happening. I don't know about this idea, but it's an interesting idea. Okay. A person should give his ransom, his kaper, for his soul, for his nefesh to God. It doesn't say kaper for his iniquities or sins. Now, usually we think of Yom Kippurim, we're doing kapara for averot. Here, we're not doing a kapara for an avera. I didn't do anything wrong necessarily. I might have, but that's not the point. The point is it has to do with my neshama, my nefesh, my soul. But for the souls. And why does it repeat to give the ransom for one soul? In other words, the pasuk, if you go back to the beginning, is very repetitious. Ki tisa et rosh b'nei Israel lifkudehem v'natnu ish kofer nafsho l'Hashem bifkodotam v'lo yihiyeh b'hem nekev bifkodosam. I mean, we're counting them twice. Why are we counting them twice? It doesn't make sense. It's a kofir, but it's also a preventative of a negative. The pasuk is confusing. So the Rebbe wants to know what's going on. Excuse me. And why does it repeat to give the ransom from one soul? It could be that this raises the souls from the low state resulting from the golden calf. In other words, this mitzvah is given in the same parsha. It's given in the same parsha as the avera of the Egel Zahav, of the golden calf. So there may be a reason why we juxtapose these two ideas, number one. And number two, the first half shekels were given the next year while they were still at Har Sinai, hadn't yet left, and maybe before they leave Har Sinai, which happened in ER 2 months later, a month and a half after Adar, under those circumstances, maybe this was part of the kapara for that avera. Not an unreasonable position to take. Okay. He's going to say, but the answer is different. The answer is that there is a world called Kol Yisrael. There is an entity, there's a set in the world that's called all of Israel, the entirety of the Jewish nation, which is whole, without sin or blemish. When you look at Kehilat Yisrael, which is Kol Yisrael, that entity is without blemish. It's only when the Jewish nation gets splintered into all sorts of different units, that's when we can be divided. And when that happens, that wedge of division comes in, splitting us, then the individual groupings can get picked off. Evil can affect them. But the unity of Israel is such that it cannot be affected. It cannot be hurt or harmed. Without sin or blemish, without pigam is his language. Therefore, even if an individual, if I'm in this umbrella organization of all of Israel, Kol Yisrael, together, then even if one of the individuals sins, the whole remains with its kedusha, because the Satan has no, whatever Satan means, the evil stuff can't affect the individuals, because the individuals are subsumed into the whole, and the whole is Mizgav, is a fortress of protection. Through this, every individual Jew can be kadosh and tahor. Even if I'm not personally holy and pure, I can achieve this kedusha and this tahara by combining myself with the people around me, and return to cleave to one's roots, shorish. In other words, through my connection to the whole of Klal Yisrael, I can get back to the roots. I can get back to the other. Sorry, the sneeze was coming up, it didn't come out. Okay, I can get back to the roots of the community, which were pure, back to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. But I can only find my way back to the pure root if I am part of the body politic of the nation. The giving of the machatzita shekel by every individual builds the unity of the whole. I give my half, somebody else gives half. I can my little shtickle, my small percentage, and be, when they all get together, we've got a whole. We've got a generality, a cloud. There's not with the Matzah atones for the sin of the golden calf, or of the selling of Yosef, which we all are involved with. These and those are the words of the living God. They're both right. The sin against Yosef maimed the attribute of yesod, fundamental stability, as expressed in the unity of Yisrael. The golden calf maimed the attribute of emunah, belief in God. There are two necessary components to make Klal Yisrael whole. Number one, we have to be whole, unified. That's called yesod. We have to have deep, yesod is foundation. We have to have a deep, solid foundation that doesn't allow the edifice to shake. Okay, it's like, these buildings the town of 38 buildings. They pile drive these these rods deep into the earth so that no earthquake can shake those buildings. The same thing is true here, lahavdil, that when we're unified, we can withstand any storm. That's number one. And in terms of the unity of the nation, that was the sin of Yosef, that we split the unity of the 12 brothers. That's Yesod. But there's also emunah. When we're together, we have perfect faith in Hashem. And that also is a bulwark against a defense, against outsiders coming and attacking us. That is why the section says that the Machzit Shekel is a kapara twice. Once for the sin of Yosef and dividing the nation, and the second for the sin against Hashem of the golden calf, which took down our emunah in a Kadosh Baruch Hu. We can fix both the injury to Yesod and to emunah by giving the Machzit Shekel. All individuals become part of the whole. And the symbolism of that is very powerful indeed. Now, so how nowadays do we fulfill this custom? In other words, in the time when there was a Beit HaMikdash, the Rambam, look at the bottom of the page before we do the Ramah, in Hilchot Shekalim, says everyone is obligated to give a half shekel. Priests, Levites, Yisraels, converts, and freed slaves. Women, slaves, and children are not obligated. Nevertheless, if they give a half shekel, it may be accepted. By contrast, if a Samaritan or a non-Jew gives a half shekel, it should not be accepted. So in other words, this is the original mitzvah while we had a Beit HaMikdash. And the actual money went to the Beit HaMikdash and bought the korbanot. In other words, all of the offerings in the Beit HaMikdash, which were brought by the community, not if I, God forbid, committed a sin and I bring a sin offering, that's me. And if I want something nice happen, I want to bring a korban todah, that's on me. But when the community brings the sacrifice every morning and every afternoon, those sacrifices can't come from me. They have to come from the entirety of Klal Yisrael. The Machzit Shekel from everybody paid for those communal sacrifices. Every korban tzibur was paid for by the Machzit Shekel. And it unified us into the tzibur, the kehillah, that performs these communal acts. That's when the Beit HaMikdash stood. Once the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, there's nothing to do with the money, and people are no longer obligated to do it. So we had no obligation to give a true Machzit Shekel since the destruction of the temple in the year 70 of the Common Era. 1947 years ago. So when we give it, it's a minhag. And a lot of commentaries, we're going to talk about this in a second, say, make sure you don't say, this is my Machzit Shekel. What we're supposed to say is that this is a zecher, this is a remembrance of Machzit Shekel. Okay, it's a minhag to remember what once happened when we had the Beit HaMikdash. So the Ramah in the Shulchan Aruch talking about how we fulfill this mitzvah, the Mechaber, Rabbi Yosef Kara, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, doesn't mention giving Machzit Shekel. It's possible that his Sephardic community in Tzfat didn't do it. I don't know. I don't know. But anyways, the Ramah, writing in 1572 with his notes on the Shulchan Aruch, says the following. Some say that there is a custom to give prior to Purim. So the minhag is changed. It used to be you had the whole month. The halacha was You have a whole month of Adar to give your machzit shekel, one coin, one machzit shekel to the Beit Mikdash, which was a silver coin that weighed half a shekel, and it's approximately 9 grams of pure silver. Okay? So some say that there was a custom to give prior to Purim a half coin that is established in that place and in that time as a memorial to the shekel half coin that they would give in Adar. And since the word truma, offering, donation, is written 3 times in that portion that we read, 2 days ago, and we'll read again in 2 weeks. In that portion, there's a minhag to give 3 half coins. And there is a minhag, a custom, to give on the night of Purim prior to praying the mincha prayer. And such is the custom in all of these provinces. Okay? So the Ramah says that they gave a half coin that was the half coin of whatever nation you were in. I don't know why I took it with me when I made Aliyah again in 2017. I've got taped together 3 American half dollars, U.S. half dollars that we used to use in the shul. So everybody came to shul with a half dollar. So I kept this, and I would say to people, well, what you do is you give a minimum of $1.50 to buy these coins. You make a bigger donation. You put the money in, you buy them, you pick it up, and you put it in, and you say it's a zecher, it's a remembrance of the machzit shekel. It's not the machzit shekel itself. Okay, so far so good. Here's the issue. In certain circles, there became the custom that became the minhag of the Kaf HaChaim, who's really Sephardic, to actually make sure that it should have the value of 9 grams of silver, which today is about 25 shekel. More or less, about 25 shekel. So some people are makpid to give 3 half shekel coins, but they pay the 27 shekel. Or there is actually some coins that have been made in silver that weigh 9 grams that say Zecher leMachzit shekel, and you can buy them. There are organizations that sell them, and you can give that. Now, having said that, I have to tell a story. In 1984, when my first Purim, after making Aliyah for the first time, I had heard that the Rabbanut had minted a silver coin that you could give. And so before Purim, we got to just before Purim, and I called. I called Heichel Shlomo, which is where the chief rabbi's office was in the good old days. They outgrew that. They now have a big office building near Tachane Merkazit here in Jerusalem. So I called the office of the Rabbanut, of the Rav Rashi, and I said, is it possible to get these coins? And so the guy said, gee, I don't know. I'll get back to you. So this very nice fellow, who was, I assume, some sort of secretary, gave the message. And about, half an hour or so later, I get a call from one of the members of the Bet Din of the Rabbanut. And he says to me, I don't understand what you're talking about. The Ramah says you give 3 coins based on the country in which you live. So think about it. Your Zaidi would have loved to have given a coin that said on it half shekel from Medinat Israel. How can you want to possibly do anything different than that? This is the dream of thousands of years of Jewish history. Just give 3 half shekels. Now, this is before the inflation. Those half shekels were worth very, very little. Today, this is just before they took, 1,000 of the old shekels became 1 of the new shekels. So they weren't worth very, but I did it. And I've been doing it ever since. The half shekels. I've got my half shekels on the shelf over here. And this is what we should do. That's number one. And when we do it, we should have in mind 2 ideas. We should have in mind 2 ideas. Number one, it's a remembrance, it's a custom that's zeicher to what we once have, hoping we can do it for real again with real silver coins, with the real amount in the future. But right now, it's just a minhag, zeicher to remind. That's number one. And number 2, we should be thinking that giving this connects me to Klal Yisrael. So those 2 ideas should be really in our heads. Now, all of this is the introduction to what the Magen Avraham says. Now, the Magen Avraham, who was a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch in Europe, writing in the middle of the 1600s, about 100 years after the Shulchan Aruch was written. So the Magen Avraham, some people say he's amongst, if not the most important commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. On this point, the Magen Avraham says, Miben Esrim, in the Torah, they were counting for the army, so it was from 20 to 60. Okay. Zehu Ladat Reb Avadim Batanura. Reb Avadim Batanura, the famous commentary on the Mishnah, says that it should be men from the ages of 20 to 60. That's all. Aval Hatosfot Yom Tov, another commentary on the Mishnah, Katav Shahaposkim Cholkim. Most of the halachic authorities disagree with Reb Avadim Batanura, with the Rav. And what do they say? V'svir lehem to ben yud gimel chayav. You should start giving it 13. Look, it's not the real machzit shekel. Forget about that. It's a minhag. It's a beautiful minhag. And so you can start doing it when you're a bar mitzvah kid, because once you're a bar mitzvah kid, that's when you start doing mitzvah. This is the remembrance of a mitzvah. It's a beautiful minhag. Why wait till you're 20? Start doing it when you are 13. V'nashim peturot. But women don't have to do it. That's what the Tosfot Yontif said. However, B'Hagaot Maimoniot, which is a commentary on the Rambam. Now, I read to you the Rambam when he talked about the mitzvah, a few minutes back, but this commentary on the Rambam, as quoted by the Magen Avraham in the Shulchan Aruch, says, "Denashim v'yeladim chayavim," that women and even children are obligated, that everybody should do this. Why should everybody do this? Everybody should do this for 2 reasons. Number one, you should do it because we're just hoping that the Beit HaMikdash will come back, okay? And number 2, we should do this because we believe that Machzit HaShekel somehow connects us to all of Klal Yisrael. Now, I'm not telling anybody to forget about whatever your customs have been, from time immemorial, and what your mother did and your grandmother did, and they didn't do it, and you don't want to do it. I'm not by any means saying to do it. But I think it's beautiful. If you don't have a minhag, or you don't know what the minhag was of your family, I think listening to the Magen Avraham and everybody just taking the 3 half shekels and doing it, I think is very, very beautiful. And I always did it for all my kids. And once they got to bar and bat mitzvah in America, here I don't know. it's like it doesn't seem to be as formal here. So I don't always have them all in mind when I do it. But maybe I this year I will, because it's on my mind. But now that they're big and I can talk to them about it. But I think it's a beautiful idea. The beautiful idea of combining ourselves with the entirety of the Jewish nation, and it's in that combinatia, it's in that unity that we have our strength as a people. I know it's wonderful that we have, the IDF is strong and the Air Force is strong and all of that's wonderful. And the economy is doing well overall. But the real strength of Klal Yisrael is when we are unified. And that's what the Matzah Shekel represents and symbolizes. And that's why I wanted to make sure that as we come to Rosh Chodesh, just put the seeds of the thought into your heads, and maybe see this as a positive custom to keep in mind. And I just hope and pray that this Adar and this Purim just is the beginning of unity in the Jewish nation. Can we use some achdus now? It's like we're almost fighting in the streets with each other. Forget about the Arabs. It's so important that Klal Yisrael sees itself as one combined unit, fighting together for the destiny of Klal Yisrael. And when that happens, then we can really say, Mishenichnas Hadar, Marbim B'Simcha. And the Simcha, the greatest joy that we can possibly have, is in the unity of the nation, as symbolized by the Matzah Shekel. Okay, thank you all very much for coming this evening. I see that last week we had 9. Now the numbers go up and down, but I'll believe that to tell people I will have the recording up tomorrow. Okay, thanks for coming. Bye-bye. And Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.